First thing to highlight today is Powell's highly anticipated presentation at the Jackson Hole Summit, which was virtual this year. And I think his message was very much in line with his message from previous meetings and in line with market expectations. So Powell expects tapering to start by the end of this year, but he was very clear that tapering does not carry a direct signal into the timing of rate hikes. The Fed's threshold for raising rates is much higher than for tapering. The Fed still wants to see full employment before raising rates, and we're just not there yet, with the unemployment rate improving, but still sitting around 5.2%. The Delta variant continues to be a headwind to the economic recovery. We saw the pace of hiring slow in the August payroll report, although other labor market metrics continue to show strength, whether that's initial unemployment claims or the JOLTS data. I also wanted to cover China, and some of you might recall that in last month's update, we highlighted continued China regulatory action as something to watch for. Sure enough, you can see here that the month of August set a new record for regulatory actions, and September is already off to a fast start. And in just the last month, we've seen crackdowns on video game consumption, ride-hailing fees, private equity and venture capital funds, price controls in the real estate market, medical pricing reform. There was even a crackdown on the fan circle culture in the entertainment industry, and 3 celebrities were actually arrested. There's also been talk of China banning US listed IPOs for data-intensive tech firms. And we've had some conversations recently with some of you about the variable interest entity structure, or the VIE structure, that Chinese companies use for the US listings. That's definitely something worth monitoring for those of you who invest internationally. And then most recently, Alibaba made a $15.5 billion donation to China's Common Prosperity initiatives. And that's about 1/3 of their cash balance. This is not the first donation of its kind. And for those of us operating in free market economies, these risks are very hard to quantify, but it does seem likely that these regulatory actions are going to continue to weigh on corporate profits, not just on Chinese domestic companies, but also multinationals with China exposure. We would also argue that there is also risk to the long-term innovation and entrepreneurial spirit within China. So these are all considerations we are taking into account when looking at names with China exposure, not just for the Gabelli global growth strategy, but for the multinational names in our domestic growth portfolio as well. Also, we don't like to repeat topics too much month to month, but there are more headlines in the cybersecurity space, with President Biden holding a cybersecurity summit. Participants included Tim Cook, Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, and Andy Jassy of Amazon. And this follows Biden's executive order in May, which focused on shoring up federal agencies' IT footprints with zero trust security architectures. Clearly, this is an area of focus for the public sector, and Biden used the summit to highlight the need for the private sector, which is responsible for the bulk of our country's critical infrastructure, to step up investment. So you had Microsoft pledge to invest $20 billion over 5 years to improve the security of its own products. Google pledged $10 billion. And this segues nicely into a really quick recap of the slew of cybersecurity earnings that we had in August. And we've seen strength across the board. Zscaler, the last one to report later this week. I wanted to highlight Cloudflare's quarter, though, given what we judge to be a bit of a game-changing development. So to be a bull on Cloudflare today, I think you have to believe that this company is going to be increasingly relevant with the largest enterprises in the world. Cloudflare continues to increase its penetration of market, and that was really clear this quarter when they announced a win with the Department of Homeland Security. That was a deal that they won in partnership with Accenture. Cloudflare used to be viewed as a small business solution, but this just goes to show that that is clearly not the case anymore. Lastly, I wanted to touch on C Limited, owned in the Gabelli Global Growth Fund and in Gabelli Growth Innovators. C is a digital super app in Southeast Asia with an e-commerce arm named Shopee, a gaming platform named Greena, and a more nascent but quickly growing digital wallet. C reported earnings on August 17. Really strong growth across all business segments, but we wanted to point out that Free Fire, which is C's first in-house mobile game to become a global phenomenon is gaining traction overseas, including in the US. And this is an exciting development given Free Fire is C's profit engine that is funding its other growth investments at the moment. We would also note that Tencent owns 25% of C. C distributes Tencent's games in Southeast Asia, in the Southeast Asia region. And given China's crackdown on video gaming, we think Tencent might be incentivized to allocate more resources to its international ambitions. And C's Garena platform could be a beneficiary in that regard.
Investors should carefully consider the investment objectives, risk, charges, and expenses of the fund before investing. The prospectus, which contains more complete information about this and other matters, should be read carefully before investing. To obtain a prospectus, please call 1-800-GABELLI or visit www.gabelli.com.